Amazing. How's it going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be interviewed today. I know we've been trying to get it in the calendar for a while,
Yeah,
but we finally managed to. So thank you.
indeed. Thanks for bearing with me as well. It's
No
been
worries, no worries. How's working in lockdown going for you?
yeah, it's been fine. I've had a few accountancy exams alongside as well, so I've been a bit of back and forth
Nice.
of sort of studying and then working. But overall, I think it's been a pretty good experience. I'm lucky. So I work at Ernst and Young, and they've been very good at sort of supplying all the equipment you need, and
That's good.
everything's already. You could work from home beforehand, so
Yeah.
luckily it's all been set up very easily to facilitate that, which has been good.
Amazing. That's good to hear. In today's conversation, I want to make it as informal as possible. A lot of the viewers are kind of like pre-students of university, in university, and some are recent graduates. It would be great if you could tell me a bit about your background, a bit about what you're currently doing, just an introduction to you.
Yep, sure. So my name's Rosalie Boyle. I'm a fifth year executive at Ernst& Young. I joined EY straight out of sixth form, so I didn't go to university. So I did a school leaver/apprenticeship program, and I'm 2 months away currently from qualifying. So I'll qualify in December 2020 as a chartered accountant. And I'm originally from Devon, so Exeter way, and moved to London age 18 to start my career at Ernst& Young. I work in insolvency and restructuring, so I spend half my time with companies that have gone insolvent or bankrupt and trying to shut those down. I spend the other half trying to save companies or companies that are doing really well, trying to improve them and restructure them so they can do even better in the climate they're in.
Amazing. That is a very good summary, and very easy to understand. That's very impressive as well because you didn't go to university, and we'll go into all of that shortly. But if we touch on your background, upbringing, what was growing up in Devon like, and what prompted you to move to London?
So for me, I was originally born in Sheffield, so up north, and sort of lived in. My parents were missionaries as such in Sheffield, that they basically worked. My mum was an English teacher, my dad for a church. With asylum seekers up there, basically trying to help them teach English and stuff like that. We then moved down to Devon, which was a completely different, to a very middle class little village that was very pretty, which was completely different, polar opposite, but was very lucky to be. So went to a comprehensive school, throughout went to different primary schools. So had a real mixture of sort of home birds, a lot of people there, you know, had grown up in that town, their parents had grown up in that town, they would do their high school, do A levels, and then would get a job in that town, get married and settle down. So a lot of people were quite home birds. But the other lucky thing I had was that the village I lived in had a lot of people who had worked in London previously,
Right.
done 20 years of London, and then moved down south to sort of have a bit more of a balanced life, but therefore had a lot of role models, people who were partners at big firms like PwC, who had worked in banks, who worked in insurance firms and stuff like that. So although my schooling background maybe didn't have so much of that, my sort of people around me did, which I was really fortunate to have. My dad then went into business in MBA, and has always been very entrepreneurial, so I've kind of always taken after him,
Mm.
and he always gave me sort of passion for business and big business, which is always the thing that's driven me to sort of go to something and to know the sort of end goal that I wanted to get to. I was then went to a sixth form that was actually 12,000 people. So for me, that was for 2 years, called Exeter College, and therefore kind of had a unique experience for 2 years and realised it wasn't so much for me, that I'd kind of already had 2 years of self-study and, going out and, the sort of freedom while living at home in the evenings. So from that, I did several sort of internships that my college offered. One of them was at EY, and they did a 2-week summer school that I could be a part of. So applied for that and got into that, and just really enjoyed the culture. And then from there, accepted the job and off I went.
Amazing. Wow, wow, wow. Because it's quite a big decision when you did A levels, right?
Yes.
When you're doing your A levels, and then it's like, all right, typically everyone's going to uni, but you made that
Mm.
decision that, you know what, this isn't for me. How was that a tough decision? Was it a tricky decision? What
I
was
mean, it's
your parents' response to that as well?
so really interesting. Down there, apprenticeships or even the word apprenticeship is just not a thing. You know, school
Mm,
leaver programs are not heard. Sort of down in Devon, probably thinking it's probably about 10 years behind maybe what it is in the capital. My mum had been to uni, was an Oxbridge graduate, so was very much on the uni path of like that's your only way to a decent life. My dad actually only went to a polytechnic and therefore um, was still very ambitious and still has got himself incredible places, but said actually, you know, from the world of work I've seen, because he works very internationally, actually this might be a potential opportunity. So I was sort of very two-way house. But the best story of, sort of the reason I decided,
yeah.
well, one of the reasons I decided EY versus uni, I think the other sort of side note of that actually is that I'd done 2 years of studying at this college and realised I probably couldn't self-study for 3 more years, and I knew I wanted to go to London
Mm,
afterwards as a graduate.
yeah.
And with my, although I was going to get incredible A levels and probably get into, I think Bath Uni was the one I'd applied for, got
Oh,
all my
nice.
places, but realised actually the graduate market was so much more competitive, and if I knew that's what I wanted to go into
Mm,
3 years later, what's the point in waiting 3 years and then chancing my bets again later
yeah.
on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I also used to babysit for my village, and lots of sort of kids in the village, and they had just happened to have a village party, someone's birthday, and because down there everyone talks about everything
Mm.
to everyone, the party decided to have a vote, and I got a 60-40 vote to go to EY versus uni. So
Oh, wow.
I was like,
Wow.
okay, 6% of people in my village think I should go to EY.
Yeah.
So it's always a fun little
Wow. Wow.
story.
Wow. And so your first interaction with EY was the 2 week program. What
Indeed.
was that like? Because I know, like, I've done a lot of work with EY, and they're really good at, you know, helping young people from an
Mm.
early age, you know, before uni, and they do a lot of good programs. And so, what was that like? Because that must have been really good for you, because it led to or played a part in
Mm.
you wanting to join this company full time, right?
Yeah, so for me it was, I'd never heard of Ernst& Young or EY, never heard any Big Four, um, and just got onto this, luckily this summer school, through the application process. And I think the main word was just inspiring. They really put people who'd been on the program for a couple of years and just, they told us what they were doing. They were very realistic about it. But also just sort of gave me, I guess, lifted my visions and like horizons of being like, okay, this is something I could do. This is what sounds interested. And they very, in layman's terms, told us what each of their departments did. We did a little bit of work experience just to see what a day-to-day office like. Because I think almost until you try something,
Mm,
you don't know for certain if it's something you're going to find interesting. So just doing, you know, a case study and doing a little bit of work experience, um, and just seeing that. And I think the best thing sort of about EY at that point was they sort of gave you the mentorship
mm,
of people, even if it was just the 2 weeks. I had just one person who was looking after me, who, you know, you could ask all these questions to, and nothing felt stupid to ask, which I really appreciated, because a lot of the places you feel they're very big and very overwhelming, big
yeah.
glass buildings in the middle of London. I think the main thing is it just gave me confidence, and from the start they're like, you know, we're not here just to purely bring you into EY, we're here to give you work experience and just to sort of heighten your vision of what you could do with your life,
Mm.
which I think I've seen many people come through the program since, and that's really been a key thing, is of just, right, let's increase your vision, increase your expectations,
Mm.
and let's see where in the world you can fly.
Amazing. And what was the application process like to get onto, you know, to not go to uni and do
Mm.
EY full time? What was that process?
So it's the same process as you do for a grad program, but for so for the summer school, I had to do a psychometric test, and then some numbers, and then a phone interview, and then just submit my personal statement, and CV. That then led on to the second stage, which was then I had another phone interview, which actually now is an internet interview, and that's just because of numbers, and then a assessment day, and then a final interview. So normally it's psychometric tests, a online interview, a group assessment day, which is about 100 people now, and then a final interview.
Wow, wow. And then you join like in a few months, and you're a full-time
Yes. So
employee, or?
yeah, so I got my what's the word? It was an unconditional offer as well, which was
Oh, nice.
amazing. And I got it in the December of A2 year,
Ah,
and
right, right.
decided that's what I wanted to do. So to be honest, probably didn't do as well in my A levels as I should have, which my mum will constantly say, and constantly comes back to. But hey ho, I'm telling her I'm earning now, so she can.
Exactly. I mean,
But
yeah, you
um,
one of the major benefits obviously is you don't have that uni debt on your shoulders. And then
true.
on top of that, you're an earner. You start making money whilst all your peers are doing a 3-year degree. And then, like someone else I previously interviewed on this series, they decided not to go to uni. They worked for a year, and then they thought, you know what, I might as well do uni. So they went to uni, and then after
Mm,
that, they worked. So there's lots of ways to go about it. Um,
exactly.
and now more than ever, this route, like the route that you've taken, a lot of young people are taking it because there's no right or wrong way to do
Mm.
these things. um yeah.
And I
So
think that's a great thing. There is really no right or wrong way of doing it. It's whatever works best for you, and there's still opportunities at every single stage, which is
mm,
really good.
how big was it? Was it like a class of you that did this, or was it just you, or how many people were doing it?
So was this for the 2-week internship or the?
For not going to uni and doing EY
Oh,
full
I
time.
see what you mean. So I think so. I was. It really depends. So there was the sixth form college had 4,000 people doing A levels.
Mm,
I probably couldn't tell you exactly how many did these kind of friendships, but actually I was the first in my friendship group to do it. And
right.
after that, there was about 20 of us in that friendship group, and everyone else was doing uni. I didn't know anyone else in my gift and talent group who was doing it. And after that, how many of my 6 different friends in that group of 20 decided to apply for
Okay.
school leaver programs and did them. So it was really cool that I think like once one person did it,
A lot
then
more.
everyone else started to suddenly realized it was an option and went, well, this is something I know I want to do
Yeah,
later on.
yeah.
So then the application processes all went through and we all sort of helped each other. But
Mm,
it was a really interesting sort of cycle. But
yeah,
originally it was just me out of this,
got it.
group of massive, it was, I think there was just there was such an expectation that if you were smart you would go to uni and that was the only way, and if you did anything else then you were wasting your life and you were going to hit a glass ceiling at some point.
There is that stigma or that
Mm,
perception that people paint. So then you get into the EY program, and then you move to London, which is a big move,
mm,
but it's something you wanted to do. How did you adapt to, living? I assume you were living alone, or were you with mates? And how did you adapt at 18? I'm just trying to think,
mm.
to leave your career of studies like academia and then enter full-time work. What was that transition like? Because oftentimes it's quite daunting and can be quite
Yeah,
scary, especially for someone so young.
I mean the phrase jump in the deep end and learn to swim unless you drown was certainly, I think, the best way of describing it. I moved in with 2 girls, which was great. One was on the course, one wasn't, and the two of us who were on the EY together just stuck together like glue.
Mm,
We had a whale of time. You were getting paid, and you could go out. There was all sorts of free drinks. But I think the other thing was just like the big change for me was suddenly going from everyone around you is, at college and stuff, is ultimately your friends and then they're your classmates, etc. Whereas the switch that actually everyone around you is first and foremost your workmate, your colleagues, and
yeah.
there's therefore a sort of level of professionalism that you have to show. And I think I had a manager, so my manager in charge, my counsellor, I sort of clung to her kind of like a mother figure, and I think she was
Ah,
like,
nice.
didn't sign up for this, didn't sign up for an 18-year-old who's just turned up to London and doesn't know anyone. um, for me, I go to church, so I found a local church and they adopted me as sort of one of their own and had loads of people there who looked after me and sort of
Mm,
took me under their wing. So that was my main thing. But I think just it's such just it was all it still has been such a steep learning curve, but just I think it's almost that thing of, if you jump off the end of the diving board, the quicker you do it, or you go down a death slide, the quicker you do it,
Mm.
the more experiences and fun things you're going to do, because you'll enjoy it without getting the worry. So
Yeah.
a lot of it was just being like, okay, I'm just going to dive into this. I'm not going to worry too much, because if I do, then I'm suddenly going to see
Yeah, no, I
the
think that's really
craziness
good
of it.
advice. A lot of growth and development comes from stepping out of your
Mm,
comfort zone.
yeah.
And it's really hard to do, but once you do it, you look back and you kind of smile and you encourage more of it, because
Mm,
you know there's a lot to gain from it.
yeah.
Is the program, it's still happening, right? There's
Mhm.
still yeah. Is it very structured, or what is it? Is it like a 1 year program or a 2 year program?
So it's actually a 4.5 year program, or technically a 5 year
Oh, wow.
program, but so it's the same program you do as a graduate, but just extended out slightly. So the graduate program is 3 years, and the apprenticeship program is 5 years. So you join first year, and you basically work your way through 15 different exams while working in your department alongside. So you'll have like blocks out for college, and then you'll have like a couple of weeks back in the office for studying and working. Then you'll sit your exams.
Mm.
So I've got my final exam on the 4th of November, and then you sort of work through that as you go through. You go up the grades as you go as well. Increased promotions, increased pay rises. I think the thing I found really incredible was that you were sort of, when you were first year, whether you're a grad or you're a school leaver, or an apprentice, you were the same level.
Mm.
So I've got this surreal thing now. There's people joining me who was in the same college class or sixth form class as me, who are now, I'm like, oh, could you do my printing for me, or could you do this task? And they're like, we went to school together. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm technically your superior.
Yeah.
So, which is such a weird concept, but just got quite fun as well, of sort of remembering that you were 18 when you joined, and you have got experience behind you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's surreal, but it's good fun. And through that, I guess there's a lot of professional development and stuff like that, but you are just treated as an employee.
Mm.
You're not sort of differentiated out,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good.
That's cool. I'm looking at your LinkedIn, and as you just mentioned, so you do qualifications on the side, so you kind of get a very
Yes.
recognized qualification as
So
part of the program.
you become a chartered accountant, so you get the ACA. So for the first year, you do something called CFAB, which is equivalent to a foundation degree. And then after that, you do the rest of your ACA, which is the last extra set of exams, and that makes you, it's equivalent to a master's.
Oh
It
wow,
makes you a chartered accountant, and it's a more sought after qualification than a master's normally, as it's basically just a sign and a certification that you are good at business. It gives you a really good overall knowledge, and it's worldwide renowned and accepted as well.
amazing. And EY obviously fund that, they pay for it.
Hmm.
You just need to study. They give you time to study for it as well, right?
They do give you time to study. You get study days, and you'll go to college and you'll be taught all the stuff, and then it's just evenings, weekends for those periods that you're doing. So it's hard. That would be the one thing, is like, it is a lot of studying to do it, but it's such a worthwhile qualification.
Yeah.
And if you're going to uni, you'll still be studying, and if you're doing you'll do the same program, but just in a slightly short space if you're a graduate anyway. So you're
Mm.
just basically doing a graduate program, but over 4 years rather than
Yeah,
three.
because a lot of uni students end up doing their degree and then joining an EY or a PwC or a
Mm.
KPMG, etc. And then the firm tells them to do the ACA. So it's like
Yes.
they're doing the degree and then they've still got to do this qualification. Whereas in your case, you're doing the qualification, you don't need to spend 3 years on a degree.
Mm.
And you're not even in the same place, you're ahead of them. So it's super useful. And then outside of work, I see you hold a position vice chair at the Chartered Accountant Student Society.
Mhm.
How did that come about, and what's that like? What do you do as part of that?
Yeah, so sure. So for me, I do a lot of schools work outside of EY as well. So EY is great at being flexible. They basically want to bring up the next generation of accountants, but making it as diverse and incredible as possible. So they're very happy for you to go out to schools to do presentations and stuff like that. So I've done that. I've had the opportunity through all those different things. There's a program called Young Apprentice Ambassadors Network, which I'm also a part of, which works with the government. So through that, I've been able to speak at Parliament, at CEO conferences, about my experiences of being an apprentice. And then the ICAW is the like authority board for my accountants in my authorizing body, so kind of like a trade union. And they're the ones who set all my exams. They're the ones who run the ACA. And so I'm basically now, they have different societies for each sort of bracket of members. So I'm the vice chair of the community of the society that runs basically socials, networking events, training for any students in London. So there's a committee of about 20 of us, and there's 5,000 ACA students in London under ICAW. So through that, it's just, basically organising events and running events to basically help ICAW students make the most of their career and have the opportunities available to them as much as possible, so they can see their full potential, but also, network and meet other people. You go to uni often to network, so why not network with people in your industry as well? So it's very
Yeah,
much more specific. And
that's very,
yes.
very useful. Very useful. A lot of students wonder about apprenticeship schemes and not going to uni. Will it kind of pigeonhole me? Will I be stuck with this organization? Will it mean I can't move on like to different industries and companies later on? But I always tell them, like, an example is your case. You've got this qualification. You've got like 4+ years of experience on your CV at a big four. It's actually easier to move on with this on your CV compared to graduating and not really having, as much experience. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone who before me said it opens up doors
Mm.
rather than closes them. I think something like 98% of FTSE 100 companies have a chartered accountant on their board of directors. And in a business world, it's great. I've got friends who've gone off and set up their own businesses. I've got friends who become personal trainers, people who have set up, small companies who've gone off and do completely other things. But the thing around it is it also just teaches you really good business acumen as well.
Yeah.
So you don't have to stay in your purely chartered accountant way. You can go into banking, you can go into insurance. There's so many jobs available for it. And the other thing is, if you want to go and just become part-time and just do some, make the accounts, every company needs an accountant. So you're basically opening up any door at any point. Any business needs an accountant. So there's such a plethora of opportunities out there.
Cool. And specifically on your role, you mentioned you're in the turnaround and restructuring strategy team. A lot of the viewers will probably be wondering, what exactly do you do? What does that mean
Mm-hmm.
in layman terms? So if you could just explain that, and then talk about, your day-to-day work, what it might consist of. Obviously, it will be different every day,
Mm.
but some of the things that you might work on or be expected to do.
Sure. So turnaround restructuring strategy. We've just changed our name, so I'm still trying to
All right.
get used to changing it. So turnaround is essentially going into a business that is slightly worried of the way they're heading. So it might be, it can be all range of businesses, and it's basically running different work streams and sitting. We put one of our directors or partners on the board of directors of the company, and basically we take over the change of the company for a period of time. So that might be checking how much cash is coming in and finding ways of collecting more cash. So every business needs cash to run. Essentially, if it doesn't have enough cash, it's going to go bankrupt and it can't work anymore. So you're finding ways of improving the cash levels. You are finding ways of improving staff efficiency. So it might be that people aren't working as efficiently. How do you do that? How do you motivate a team? All sorts of areas. Business might come in and say, we have this issue. How do we solve it? So we come in and sort that out. So that's
Got it.
one side. The other side is restructuring, which has another whole range of items. The main one is insolvency,
Okay.
which is basically a company in distress comes to us, or we have a lender such as the big banks, such as like HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, or other smaller or international banks come to us and say, we've lent to this company. We are worried they're not going to be able to pay back their investment, or their covenant should basically means, have they got enough cash to be able to pay their interests? And if they don't, that might become a worry, which becomes a legal obligation to pay back the money, which could bankrupt the company. So they come to us and say, could you go in and work with this company and find a way to get them through this tricky period? So we might go in for a space of 6 to 8 months, or any period from a couple of weeks to many years, of basically how do we solve that. You can get a whole range. Often we're successful, which is really good, and that means it won't make the papers often. The other issue is then sometimes you get called in 24 hours beforehand, and the CEO or the actual company might phone you and say, so we think we're going to go bankrupt tomorrow. Can you come help us basically close down our company or sell it on? So
24
we've
hours
had that.
before.
Yes, that's the
Oh, wow.
worst one I had. I did have 3 days on a different one. I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. 3 days. Like, but these are people, these are big companies. Someone that was 3 days was a massive retail company
Okay.
that, had stores across the UK. Probably, I think they had 150 stores.
Oh, wow.
So considering they're a big, big company, that household name, and they had 3 days worth of cash left and didn't realise, so they would have pressed their
Wow.
payment button on the Friday, that would have caused the company to go completely bankrupt on the Wednesday, and would have had to close down every single store. Was crazy. But this is the sort of stuff that happens behind the scenes. The 24-hour one, we happened twice, and we had a phone call on the Saturday night from the CEO to our lead partner in our department and said, we think we're going to go tomorrow, can you please come down? So a team of 20 of us all jumped on the train on the Sunday morning, went down, worked 24 hours, and managed to come to agreements. This include being on the phone with it was at the time the Chancellor, the head of
Wow.
transport, and the head of business. So the secretaries of business and Chancellor, and Secretary of Education. So they were on the phone to them being like, okay, how do we solve this? Because they were such a big part of the UK economy as a transport company that we had to find a way of solving it. So we then were on the phone to their shareholders, which was another big household name, the head of them, of just being like, you need to put some money into this company. And we managed to save it for the first 24 hours. And then they thought, okay, we're going to have to do this again. So we did it for the next 2 days of basically negotiating, and came to a deal with the chancellor at the time, and said, okay, this is fine. 3 months down the line, however, the chancellor changed to our now chancellor,
Yeah.
who decided that actually that wasn't a deal he wanted to follow on with, and pulled the plug on it, and the company went bust. So what
Wow.
happened then is we basically had a team of about 20, 30 of us head down to the headquarters, and we basically were you effectively run the company from then on. All the directors lose all their responsibilities. You become the leaders of the companies, essentially, or your partners do. So you're off there, making the phone calls to all the banks, telling them to halt all payments. You are selling off assets. This one company had a lot of very expensive assets, or that had to be sold or preserved because they were so expensive that you had to get security in. Some of the most rogue ones I've had was, we had someone coming in. There was a company that hired out tractor, digger, and dumper trucks, and we had people turning up with big lorries trying to take them, saying we own these, and sort of people having to like chase people off site because they were basically coming in to try and steal these
Oh,
lorries. We had a
right.
guy turning up being like, I own the tires and all these tractors, and started trying to take the tires off tractors. So me and my little business suit was chasing after him in my heels in this field, being like, you can't do that. So you just have
Wow.
such a range
Wow.
of experience to the other side, which is, many, many forms and many pieces of paperwork. So there's real different sides to it. But the classic phrase that no 2 days are the same. Some
Yeah.
days you might be just looking into opportunities for new companies, and others you're chasing a guy across the field because he's trying to steal tires off tractors.
It sounds super interesting,
Mm.
but at the same time, very, very intense,
Yeah.
at times, I'm sure. Okay, interesting. What advice would you give to current students who aren't in university yet, who are thinking about doing an apprenticeship, or being a school leaver and not going to uni, but aren't really sure if they should or shouldn't do it?
I think my first thing would do your research, have a look into the companies you're thinking of looking into, and talk to those people. There'll be people on LinkedIn who are at that company who are current apprentices. See if the websites have something in, so you can talk to someone. Basically, try and get as much of a feel for the company, and what the day-to-day job is.
Mm.
Watch videos like this. I think the other thing is, I would just say, don't just hedge your bets on one thing. Have a look at uni as well. Make sure you really have assessed all your options. And I think the other thing would be speak to people who are a few years older than you, people who have come out of uni,
Yeah.
and suggest what you're going to do and ask them what their opinion is that. Because I've had quite a few friends who have now either graduated or friends at that point when I was applying who had just graduated. I'm finding it really hard to get a job in the industry I want to go into. I don't know if it was worth it. So I think that would be probably the main thing, is do your research. But secondly, just believe that you can do anything, because I think that's the thing that's going to get you through. A lot of people in the industry just say fake it till you make it. I know partners who still do that. Say, I'm just going to get this. I'm going to tell myself I've got this job. And then you fake it till you make it to get through, because opportunities often get offered to you and you might feel like you're not qualified for it or adequate for it. Tell yourself you are, and fake it till you make it, and you'll get there.
Amazing. That is very, very good advice. If so, if anyone wanted to reach out to you, is that something you would welcome? And if so, what would be the best way to reach you? Typically, I put in the link, the video description, I put the link to the person's LinkedIn. Would you like me to do that for you, or?
That's absolutely fine. So LinkedIn's probably the best way to get hold of me. But yes, any questions on EY as a whole, apprenticeships, moving to London, anything like that, I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. What I'll also do is I'll put the link to the EY School Leavers program.
Perfect.
So anyone that's watching that wants to check it out and find out a bit more there, they can do that as well. Conscious of your time, I know we've just gone past the 30-minute mark, and it's Friday, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but I think that was a really useful conversation. I think a lot of people will have learned a lot from that. Oftentimes I speak to people who have gone through uni or who are, who haven't gone through a program like yours. So it's really good that that you gave your time to speak today, because it will be really useful for a lot of people out there. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's been great. Good
amazing.
questions as well.
Oh, no, thank you. I
Yeah.
kind of cheat because I've got a list of questions here.
Yeah, no,
But,
it's good. I think that's a much better way of doing it, isn't it? Nice.
cool. Well, if you've got any questions for me, or if you ever want to reach out, or once COVID and all of that is done, happy to grab a coffee. Just
Sounds
drop me
good.
an email. Happy to help wherever possible. But
Perfect.
yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. You too. Right. Lovely to meet you.
Amazing. Lovely to
Speak
meet
to
you
you
too.
soon.
Speak
Thanks.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.